The lifeblood to a campaign in politics, the lifeblood is money. And maybe the only way this gets, with smart lawyers looking at it, is if the money starts drying up. And I'm assuming all of you've gotten a lot of calls, I've gotten a lot of calls, we've all sat there. I talked to a bunch of big donors, and they're moving all their money. I cannot believe we're in this situation.
A lot of people are wondering whether Joe Biden is going to be able to make it on the ticket to November, or for that matter, even continue to finish his first term as president. Who's going to make the decision? Will it be Barack Obama? Will it be the Clintons? Will it be Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries? Will it be Jill Biden and Hunter Biden? Maybe Commander the dog will have a say in it. Well, if you're really paying attention, ultimately, the most powerful people who would have an influence on this decision, none of those people. It's the donors, the big donors, the mega donors, the people who either have the money or raise the money to keep the party and all the political action committees going. Ari Emanuel is a major mogul out of Hollywood. He's the brother of Rahm Emanuel. He's one of those big donors. And earlier this week, he spoke at the Aspen Ideas Festival, and he is not very happy about what's going on with Joe Biden right now. Take a look.
He's telling us malarkey. His people are telling us malarkey. But we're in a very bad problem. He is not the candidate anymore. If you all remember, this is a legal issue now. He was going to get kicked off the ballot in Ohio. They elected him the candidate. So you no longer can remove him. In 3 swing states, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, there's only one Democratic Congress, Michigan. They have to vote to remove him. I don't believe the Republican Party in Pennsylvania and in Wisconsin are going to do that. Okay, and if they do, it's then Kamala Harris. We don't have. This is legal. So lawyers have to look at this, and everybody says, well, get rid of them, and brokered convention. No, I promised myself I wasn't going to swear. So this is a pickle. The lifeblood to, and I have a brother who's a politician, he's an ambassador, as it said, the lifeblood to a campaign in politics, the lifeblood is money. And maybe the only way this gets, with smart lawyers looking at it, is if the money starts drying up. And I'm assuming all of you've gotten a lot of calls, I've gotten a lot of calls, we've all sat there. I talked to a bunch of big donors, and they're moving all their money. I cannot believe we're in this situation.
Man, that's just devastating for the Biden campaign and for Democrats in general. Akash, that anyone who pays attention to American politics knows that man saying that in that setting, that's going to get things moving. Am I wrong?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of that kind of thing, right? Whether it's donors or it's members of Congress who were first doing it off the record or on background behind the scenes. Now they're coming out publicly. The media, as Gabe mentioned, obviously, after months and months and months of gaslighting us, all of a sudden, every single outlet is calling on Joe Biden to step down. He had that conversation with governors the other day. And I believe the governor of Hawaii, who's a Democrat, obviously, is a doctor. And he was very concerned by what he heard from President Biden. So they are in a real pickle. But here's the thing, Larry, the reason they're in a pickle isn't just because of Joe Biden's situation and how the convention rules and the party rules work. The reason they're in a pickle is because the president and their nominee can't do the job. The immediate successor can't do the job and is super unpopular. And we go back to the prior point, which is that no matter whose name is on the ballot, the policy track record is an awful one, and it's super difficult to defend. And so ultimately, they're going to be swimming, upstream. They're climbing uphill regardless. And this whole situation just makes it all the more difficult for them to do so, on top of having a policy record that has raised prices 20% for the average American family.
What do you make of the legal question here? Because I haven't researched this. I've got emails out to election law experts like Hans von Spakovsky and Christian Adams to sort of verify. But I think he knows what he's talking about with regard to Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, that it will take an act of those state legislatures to actually modify the ballot. that, as he put it, that is a pickle for the Democrats. They don't have much of a choice here, do they, Akash?
So that's the first that I've heard of that. I know that there's that issue with Ohio, but the party was going to try to resolve that by doing their formal nomination sooner than whatever that deadline was for the state of Ohio. I do know one of the constraints, should he step aside, is with the dollars, which is that if Harris steps up and becomes a nominee, those dollars can stay because she's already on the ticket. But should they desire to remove her from the ticket, that creates an enormous problem, not just logistically, but also financially as far as where the money flows. And so I think, as mentioned, they have a number of problems that they're potentially confronting here, and that's just one of them.
Yeah, I think one of the reports from Axios this week said that some of the big donors are asking if they can get a refund. And Julie, they can't. But what do listen, this is big money we're talking about here that Ari Emanuel represents in Hollywood. And you could see the anger and frustration with him. This is reaching a boiling point.
I couldn't help but think that, or remember rather, that the Emanuel brothers are absolutely creatures of the Clintons. And I couldn't help but feel like this a little bit reeked of bring back Hillary. And in some ways, that solves the fundraising issue, um, because she has a machine and the Clinton family has a machine. It is not a problem for them to raise money. So if they lose that money that is allocated to the Biden candidacy and will go to Kamala, I think that the Clintons can make that up. So I I- anytime I hear the Emmanuel speak on any of this stuff, I think Hillary's behind it.
That is mind-blowing insight, Julie. You're right. They are Clintonistas to the core. So yeah, so that's the play. All right, Joe and Kamala, you can keep all the millions you've raised, divided amongst yourselves, go retire. Hillary comes in at the convention. Gabe, please stop me before I come up with another conspiracy theory.
I kind of want to respond to the comments from that, just about the donor and like whether Biden will continue in the election. I don't think donors are going to decide whether Joe Biden stays in this race. It's going to be Joe Biden. It's going to be Jill Biden. It's going to be Anthony Bernal, Jill's senior advisor. It's going to be Biden's closest confidants. Donors can pull out. That could be really detrimental to their cash flow. But keep in mind, after that horrendous debate for Joe Biden, he had his best fundraising haul of the entire campaign. There's a huge grassroots base for Joe Biden still. Maybe that'll dry up. I'm not sure. But I think what is going to decide this is going to be, whether someone who worked their entire life to become president is going to be willing to step aside, and whether his wife is going to allow him to do that after, sort of accompanying him for this entire mission. I mean, remember after the debate, this was the greatest moment. Jill Biden was like, Joe, you answered all the questions. You did that. So Jill is, I think it's going to be a Biden decision. I don't think donors are going to decide.
Yeah, you did. You answered all the questions. Now let's go to the Waffle House. Despite your debilitating cold, we'll go ahead and infect everyone having a late night breakfast. Akash, the money that we're talking about here, yes, big donors from Hollywood, big tech, maybe Wall Street as well. But the unions represent quite a bit of not just money, but power, influence, and organization. Is it notable that this weekend, trying to clean things up, Joe Biden's heading to Philadelphia to talk specifically to unions?
He's going right back to his base. Gabe mentioned this, right? That there are there are millions and millions of people who are diehard Democratic voters. They're going to knock doors. They're going to make phone calls, no matter who is on the ticket. None more so than big labor. And so, what do you do when things get hard? You go right back to the people you can depend on. For Joe Biden, that's union bosses and the people who follow them. And so that shouldn't come as a surprise. What it should do, frankly, Larry, is reinforce for the Republicans, which is that organized labor is not our friend. I think they made a huge mistake inviting the president of the Teamsters Union to the RNC. The Teamsters fund millions of dollars worth of left wing causes. They endorse Democrats. They are never going to be Republicans' friends, unless Republicans completely renege on like decades and decades and decades of policy commitments. I think we've painted this picture very, very clearly, and the Democrats and the unions are dug in with each other. And so Republicans have got to keep chugging ahead against Bidenomics, against the Biden agenda, back to free markets, tax cuts, and deregulation, which is what worked for President Trump, and let Biden and the Democrats flounder like they have been.
Yeah, I will say this, though. Didn't the president of the Teamsters Union challenge Senator Mullen from Oklahoma to some sort of cage match? I mean, if they do that at the RNC, that might be worth watching.
Yeah, I'd have my money on Senator Mullen. Let's be clear.
I think you're right. Me too. All right, we'll leave it there. Although, Any of the organizers from Milwaukee who might be watching, you got 2 weeks to arrange this. You bring in the Octagon, dude, do it on a pay-per-view. You're going to raise more money for the presidential campaign that you'll know what to do with. It's free advice. You're welcome.